which really is where some of these like game-based simulations come in. You can think about, we'll talk a little bit more about that. One thing that Mindy specifically asked me to talk about was what's going on in leadership, and then we'll come back to your question about sort of maybe the more run-of-the-mill hire. But what's happening in leadership assessment, how is that changing? How are games and simulations being introduced there? I think what's really interesting is there's this whole group now of, you can call them neuroscience, cognitive ability, psychometric testing that you can do online. It's fun and engaging. You can do it through gameplay or through, the more traditional multiple choice questions, and you can find out a ton about people. And they're being used for the rank and file hires. They're also, a lot of them are now being used for leadership assessments. And again, zeroing in on not just the experience they've had, but what's their kind of neuroscience makeup, what kind of behavioral characteristics do they have. So there are tests and games and things like that that can actually really get to some of those qualities. And I think looking for some different traits like innovation and learning agility and flexibility. And so I think if you know what you're looking for, you can find new kind of fun, engaging tests and games and ways to either simulate a business situation and find that out, or just do it sort of more directly to, what the neuroscience is telling you.
Do you want to test like HPDI or something that's a generation beyond that?
There's really I think there's a really interesting kind of next generation test. I'll talk about coming up next, actually. This will get right to it. Yeah.
Are there situations where prospective employees are being pitted against each other in contests?
Perspective, yeah, I mean a lot, especially in the coding. I mean, a lot of firms will actually put out a coding contest to see, here I've got this small group. Let me see who does best on this particular exercise. Yeah, I think that's, including, I was just with this firm Ranch that does serious games, and they just showed for a law firm, they basically bring in about 20 prospective candidates and put them through a day-long game. It's sort of a simulation of a real-life kind of M&A situation, crisis, and it's fascinating. And they're looking for individual traits. They're looking for how do they work as part of a team. How do they respond to kind of crisis situations. So it's not all kind of video games. It can be, sort of these in-person business simulation. Let's find out about people before they even start. Who should we hire? Yeah.
I'll just say my concern would be in that kind of situation that unconscious biases and behavioral things would play in and actually result in less diverse hiring.
Right. Here.
Okay.
Someone agrees with you.
Okay.
Maybe the space bar?
The space bar?
The type of job I'd be best suited to. So it's measuring how quick I am to. It might look like my keyboard is jammed, but I'm actually taking a test to see the type of job I'd be best suited to. So it's measuring how quick I am to react, and it's actually very difficult. More and more companies are using online video games to test job applicants' reaction times, how attentive they are to detail, and how emotional or impulsive they might be.
Users can go on and play a bunch of short, fun games to find out what their strengths and weaknesses are, and then have those mapped onto different careers.
In this test, I have to judge a person's emotional state from a series of photographs, while this test measures whether I'm more likely to gamble if the financial reward is higher. Job matching sites like Pymetrics and Knack are both frontrunners in the race to make video game testing the norm among recruiters. But can a video game know you better than you know yourself? This test labeled me as good at memorizing and generous among friends, but it also said I was emotional and impulsive.
The other thing is that you were really good at putting in effort and getting rewarded reward out of it.
So I'm a hard worker.
You are a hard worker. The main benefit to this is when somebody's going through thousands of resumes, this type of testing can be way more informative than looking at somebody's GPA.
But one word of caution. Experts say that some of these tests can lead to discrimination. Reaction times might be faster for younger people than for older folks. And then there's the question of social background.
People who are from socio-cultural groups where they've been exposed to games, technology, puzzles, problem solving will do better than people who are from socio-cultural backgrounds where that was not part of their experience when they were growing up, and that's unfair and wrong.
But HR companies like Mercer are so intrigued about the benefits of online game testing that they're asking their best salesperson to take the test so they can hire people who are as similar as possible.
Basically, what these tests do is they run those people through the games and come up with a profile, and then you run everyone else through the profile. And they're trying to figure out what is statistically different between the people who are best practice and the rest of the group.
But should a company really want to hire employees that all share the same traits?
Diversity is clearly important. It's just that if you're exhibiting very strong sales capabilities, we want to make sure that we're playing to your strengths.
Zane Asher, CNN, New York.
So Kim actually played the Convergence game. We did actually pilot it at Mercer. So, I didn't do that.
And that's exactly what I looked like
Like
watching. When I was playing it, yes, that's how it works.
So, what I think is really interesting about the games is, so it's hard to go back to the video.
Board is jammed, but I'm actually taking a test to see the type of job.
Okay. So this is the way they work, and I think so. There are people who are saying some of this is discriminatory. It's groupthink. You're going to get people who think exactly the same way. But I think what's really interesting here. So the way these things work, and you could use it for recruiting, you could use it for leadership development. We were looking at it in terms of sales capability. So basically, they're called predictive hiring profiling systems. And we went in and we found our top sellers at Mercer. So we know who they are. They're in our sales, our performance management system. And we took them as a group and we had them play the series of games through Convergence. And it creates a profile. So these games are grounded in neuroscience research. They're backed up by neuroscience. What is experimental is the fact that the profile, the collection of these games create a profile about someone, and that really is a good match for who you're trying to find. So we created this profile, and then we ran the rest of our people with sales goals in our talent business had them play the games to see how closely they matched the profile of the top sellers. So the idea is, like what I said in the CNN interview, we're really trying to play to people's strengths. So if we can find people who have the same kind of neuroscience makeup as our best sellers, then why wouldn't we try to position them for success and give them goals and encouragement and training and development because they've sort of got the right makeup. Instead of taking everyone and saying, you've got to sell, whatever, that's not really the way that they're hardwired. That's not the way they think. That's not sort of their psychometric makeup. So you can do the same thing for a leadership profile. You could take your best managers or your best leaders or whatever, you have them create a profile, and then use that as a way to figure out who has kind of the DNA makeup like that. So that's actually the way these systems work, and I think they're fascinating. Pymetrics is doing it. There's a firm called Prophecy Sciences that just came to the market, and I just went and did it in San Francisco, and not only do they have the games, but they actually will also do biometric stuff. So I was wearing things on my fingers, and I had something watching my eyes, and that felt a little weird, to be honest. But I played games for about 30 minutes, similar games to Pymetrics, and then they told me about me and what careers I'm best suited for. I mean, it was fascinating.
So you match what you're doing?
So this is what's fascinating. So I I'm an actuary by training. I spent 25 years at Mercer as an actuary. And then it was just the last year that I've been asked to run this innovation team. And what the prophecy sciences thing said is, I matched closest to venture capital. Like the people from venture capital that came and played, I matched closer. I'm thinking, that is so weird, because that's what I'm doing now. So I mean, maybe that's completely coincidental, but I thought that was kind of crazy. That's where I ended up, and that maybe is what I'm really suited to do. Yep.
Sort of two-paired question. Did they find discrimination between the results of the tests among the top performing salespeople and everybody else? Was there in fact discrimination in the neuroscience results?
There were correlations that definitely were true. So there were things about the profile that were statistically correlated. So we got a good profile, and then we ran everybody else through, and there were clear differences in certain characteristics between the profile group and the rest of the universe.
And then the second question is, so if you when you found people who matched this profile, did they in fact become good salespeople?
Well, we literally just did it. It was just an experiment. So, I mean, what's interesting thing is, with all of these tests, right now, any story they tell you of success is anecdotal. It's all, we did this case study, here's what happened. We'll only know, 3, 5, 10, 15 years out to actually see if people who are found this way outperform over time. But it's certainly a way to get started. So I think, the challenge is companies sort of have to be on the leading edge to want to do that, because it's not, they can't speak to you.
So it's still an experiment?
It's still kind of an experimental, again, they will all give you ROI cases and, success stories, but they're anecdotal. And I think so I feel like there's kind of first mover advantage with some of these things to try it and run it parallel with something you're already using and see if it sort of gives you the same results or something different. That's what we did. We ran it with a tried and true.
Well, one thing I think is worth noting is when we did this at Mercer, it was mixed results.
Oh God, was it?
So I think it's, just to set the stage for you, in terms of the hundreds of people that we ran through it, we got some pretty visceral reactions from people who didn't like the game, who didn't want to play it, who thought the whole thing was stupid, and then we had some people who absolutely loved it and thought, this is the most leading thing out there. And we thought as a firm, we can't be out there helping our clients think through these issues if we haven't tried them ourselves. And so as we look at the profiles, it's been fascinating to watch our employee groups react to this, and those that embraced it and those that just didn't.
Well, and to Kim's point, it actually was, I thought it was so funny, because even with our leadership team, so I think we should all sort of, have confidence, we don't have to worry about what the results are, but, we're not all talking about someone says, oh, I had 3 glasses of wine, I shouldn't have done it then, and everybody's like, what are you guys worried about? But people were a little freaked out, they were. I think maybe sort of application of this in a recruiting process, really the people have nothing to lose, and they'll get back a bit of information about their career DNA, their psychometrics. I think it's a little less threatening in a recruiting situation than taking kind of, people who've been in the business for 25 years, and you're going to tell me whether I'm a good seller by this, by this game. Yeah, that was a good point. Yeah.
So I have a question, and I'll preface my comment by saying that I spent 25 years as a partner at 2 of the largest executive search firms.
Okay.
So Spencer's Stewart and Mark Ferry. So the comment is as follows, and Mark Ferry has a lot of these kind of
Sure.
things embedded in our service offering. I think it's really important to understand the difference in the talent market, because these kind of tools and assessments is typically, I've seen, applied more to entry-level, junior, or mid-level positions. Almost rarely, never would you, you might put a CBO through some kind of a psychological test, but you're never going to lead with these kind of tools at the senior end of the talent spectrum, because the difference is, when you think about evaluating talent, at the junior end, you're really looking more at a raw set of skills that will somehow unfold themselves into careers. At this more experienced level, there is a trail of reality of what this person has and has not done. And whenever we use tools, we never use them alone. So this is just yet one other indicator, and referencing is mission critical, and you're going to learn.
I say it's a data point. It's an interesting data point, and you know, agree. I think, and I think that was what we really experienced at Mercer is we had the more senior people and they were like, well, you know, my track record speaks for myself. So I agree with you. I think another sort of interesting application here for more experienced people is actually team dynamics. And so in terms of, you know, I know Kim, we did that in our leadership team as well. We're experimenting everything. You know, when you do these sort of psychometric tests, can it tell you about team dynamics and, you know, lead to either putting together more effective teams or figuring out what the team dynamic challenges might be?
Yeah, and I would still caution that all of these things, even for younger people, should be used as a data point on the
Oh,
only
absolutely,
data
I
point.
totally agree. But
So that's my comment based on my years of experience, but my question is, even if you do use these things, anybody knows that ultimately this is gonna come out with some kind of a skills assessment. So what I have found, and I've seen people do this even when they take there's an online assessment, you can take on very free, and tell you something about yourself, what kind of personality you are. If you're a somewhat sophisticated or cynical person, you're already trying to game the game.
Yeah.
So you're saying, okay, this question, what is it trying to figure out about me, and what do I want to portray? Therefore, instead of just answering with A, B, or C honestly, you can game the game. So that would be a concern, and we found that. And the second is once, if your test is standard and you repeat it, you know, Susie can tell Johnny, oh, I just did that test yesterday, and you know, this is what it is. I mean, and the proprietary component of it can erode very quickly. So how do you guard against that somebody just doesn't say, oh, I took that test, and these questions try to get it back, so these are the kind of answers. So you have a real implementation issue there.
And I think what the companies will say is the tests are designed so that you can't game the game. Now, I don't know that you can or you can't, but the way they
change the questions
like,
all the
you
time.
wouldn't really know if you're, you know, I don't know, with the balloon game or the, you know, you don't always know what they're even looking at, you know, in terms of your neuroscience. Some of these things are harder to game than others. I agree, but they'll all say that they're really built so that you can't game it.
So they're guarded against that.
Yeah.
And what's wrong, you know, and being able to game the game, it's a skill.
Yeah.
That's the right answer.
Oh, you know, actually, Joanne, your point, one thing that's always bothered me about these things is that it's a snapshot in time. And what bothers me is that, so you're a type A, type Y, whatever, when you take that test, but it doesn't allow for the fact that, you know, maybe that answer isn't the best in this context, but people mature and grow, and their skills evolve. So the issue in these kind of things is these are snapshots, not a pronouncement that you're that way. And if you gave the game, then you're a genius, but you're looking at that profile at that moment. So that's another concern about snapshots.
Yeah. Well, here's a great example.
You know, if you're talking about whittling down pools of people, you use a lot of things to do that, and, you know, why wouldn't
This
you
feels
try-
better than a lot of things.
And junior levels, I would.
Yeah. I'll see you on this thing, but I mean,
No, I
just
agree.
another
I mean,
tool,
that's,
and I found-
it's a tool in the toolkit, it's a data point. You can give it as much weight or as little weight as you want, but I think it is a great way to potentially whittle down. I mean, just to the game example, real quick, on Pymetrics, one of the games is, you saw in the video, you have to remember this like long line of numbers. And it actually doesn't say anything, it gives you no instructions except I'm gonna flash up these numbers and then you have to see how many you remember. So they flashed up the numbers and I'm sitting there thinking, wow, you know, they didn't say I couldn't write it down. Should I write the numbers down? No, that feels like cheating. Maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't. Back and forth, I couldn't decide. I didn't write the numbers down because I felt like, oh, that's cheating, and I'm the one like running, you know, sort of running the experiment. So, you know, you do it, it pops up feedback right away, and you know what it said? Write down, you know, you should write down the details. But again, I didn't even know what you were looking for. So, you know.
So you were trying to game the game.
I was trying to not anti-game the game, and you all were saying, yeah, you write it down. Yeah.
I just wonder if there's been any talk of this type of games moving into the college application space.
College, I mean, it seems like it would be kind of a natural, you know, a really natural application.
So we can skip the SATs and just play games. I vote for that.
From
Yeah, I
the
agree.
Army recruitment process.
Oh my goodness.
That's where it was originally developed,
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
World War II.
Chill, the boarding school actually started this, I don't know if it worked, but they had prospective it has shown up.
I mean, one of the other companies that was highlighted in the video, in the CNN interview, was this firm called Knack. And now they're interesting, they do the same profiling method, but their game looks like Angry Birds. It's actually, they have a wasabi waiter, and they have a balloon brigade, and you know, you're like a waiter serving all these different people. And basically, that game spins off 10 megabytes of data about the person playing the game, which is a lot of information. And they're getting as many people, like you can go online, it's, I think it's knackit.com, knackit.com. They just want people to come in and play, and the more people they get and the more profiles, then they'll be able to match your profile. But their example that they give is they with a big oil and gas company looking for innovators, they took their top 50 innovators, ran them through the Balloon Brigade or Angry Birds, whatever the waiter game, got a profile, you know, the megabytes of data, they correlated it, got a profile, and then the company ran 200 people who would apply for sort of this innovation hub through the game, and they got, you know, a direct match. And apparently, they ran it concurrent with something else and said that it gave exceptional results. So again, these are all anecdotal, but you know, how interesting that like the games that, as Kim was saying, some people hated the Python's games, but like the video games, it's like really fun. Now there, I think you have more of a sort of socioeconomic or age issue because you know people are just going to be more comfortable with sort of wasabi waiter and how do I move the keys and stuff like that. What Knack says is that the first level is your baseline, and they judge from there. So they don't start with everybody equal. You play the first time, so if you're not so comfortable, that's your baseline, and then they go from there. To the skills piece, one of the things that we think is really interesting is these really real life simulations. So virtual job tryout, day in the life. The Army actually uses this very, very heavily in recruiting. So put someone in the job, video, 3D graphic simulation of a day on the job, and ask them to do different things. You can simulate kind of technical hands-on stuff. You can do a business scenario. And actually, these are pictures. Mercer, we're building a couple of these for the oil and gas industry. Some of these real day in the life, and we'll be able to find out about kind of light technical skills and then also some soft skills. But I think it's really interesting to do this sort of virtual job tryout and what kind of information can you collect. And then, again, this is something that Mercer's building, but, we think the whole, job board, the way job boards are currently being used, those of you who have kids looking for jobs now in this online world, I'm sure I have them, I'm sure we're all feeling the same thing. It's a black hole. Our kids are applying to these jobs and they never hear back one way or the other. They don't know if they were a good fit or not, So, and they have no idea what they should do different. So what Mercer's trying to build now, and we think will be the next generation job board. For example, I know LinkedIn just bought Bright, which is a job board, so they're going to be looking differently. But really the idea of, get people in, what can I find out about them, give them feedback about their career DNA, about, hey, we didn't bring you in for an interview because actually doesn't feel like you're a great fit, but wow, looks like you'd be a great fit for something else. Figure out, their soft skills, maybe some hard skills, give them some feedback and opportunities for training. So I think the next generation job board will hopefully be much more engaging, a much better experience for our kids and the next generation of people coming through the system. So I hope that's.
I'm sure we're all sitting here thinking about entrepreneurs and whether Pi metrics could somehow be used to study success